You're listening to KPCA LP 103.3 FM. I'm Naomi Takeuchi. We're here in Petaluma, California, also online at kpca.fm and also on Facebook Live. Hello, everyone. And also I have in the studio, we have here Ray Cooper.
Yep.
And Ray here is also a fellow programmer who has a show called Food is Energy. And he's going to join me today because we were talking a little bit about the two movies that I had scheduled today are Boy Erased and A Dog's Way Home.
Yeah.
And then right before we started, he goes, I really want to talk about Vice.
Yeah.
And I said, I've already done a review about Vice, but it's always great to hear another opinion. And so before we do that, though, let me introduce to you Ray, for those of you who are watching. So Ray Cooper, he grew up in Petaluma, and for many years he hadn't considered food or nutrition. While raising backyard chickens in 2008, Ray had an epiphany and became a vegetarian. Not knowing anything about this lifestyle, he started on a voyage of discovery that led him to understand the fascinating potential of our food choices. And Ray adopted a vegan lifestyle in 2012 and created a monthly meeting called Veg Curious, or is it Veg Curious? Veg Curious, sorry. My pronunciation here. In 2015. So Veg Curious focused on food and featured a presentation on health, environment, or animal welfare. And in October 2018, Ray began broadcasting a radio show right here at KPCA LP, an FM station here in Petaluma. That the show is called Food is Energy. And Food is Energy is about helping people understand the importance of food choices and how that affects others along with themselves. And it's about finding foods that give us the most energy and avoiding being run down or the use of stimulants, because there's many coffee people out there and other stimulants. We won't go through the whole list.
Yeah.
But
They're popular.
They're popular. And it's also about finding foods that give us the most energy, and also the title of the program is Food is Energy. And when is your show? What days?
Mondays at 2 p.m.
Mondays at 2. And so welcome, Ray. And
Thank you.
We were talking before the show started about how different it is that he's on the other side of the board as a guest. And
yeah.
I'm really tickled that you're here for a couple reasons. But let's start with your opinion about Vice, because people who've listened already know some of my opinion, but I'll repeat it. But I'm curious about what you thought about the movie.
I thought it was really significant. I was anxious to go see it. I loved what really made me want to see it was the depiction of
Cheney.
I'm at a loss for a name, but
Dick
Christian
Cheney.
Bale.
Christian Bale was amazing.
What a transformation.
Yes.
And so that got me to see the movie. And I did enjoy that. That was great. Also, the George Bush, Sam Rockwell. Incredible. That was almost as
George
good.
W.
He was great. That was entertaining.
Steve Carell, too? As Rumsfeld, right?
Right. Yeah, that was good. I mean, he was right in there.
Well, I said that the problem with Steve Carell and Sam Rockwell is that the voice gives them away. That they didn't completely transform themselves, because you still heard Steve Carell's voice.
Well, Steve Carell's pretty unique voice.
Yeah, so it's unless he does a lot to transform his voice, he's still going to be Steve Carell, despite all the makeup, because they did a really good job.
He doesn't look anything like Rumsfeld, though.
Oh.
But the Bush thing, I thought there was moments, especially where he talks him into running for vice president, Dick Cheney, that it was really right on. But another thing was unique about the movie was that it was kind of a documentary, but it was also portrayed as characterizations, so a reenactment sort of thing.
Right.
But well done. Mm-hmm. But they did try to stick with history along the way.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was interesting, because I didn't know some of those things, and I felt that they were trying to be true to. Obviously, they were down on Cheney. I mean, these are not Republicans.
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily down on Cheney, because there were a couple things that I felt were very illuminating about that film. In fact, I mentioned this when I had reviewed it, about how Dick Cheney transformed the role of the vice presidency. The way that previous vice presidents were more of a figurehead, more just the second in line to the throne kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in this movie, they talk about, I think it was called unitary governance, and
Right.
how that the president has the power to designate and delegate certain powers to the vice president.
Right.
And
almost as if he had more power than the president in
Yes,
some situations.
exactly.
I never knew that, and I believe they did stick close to history on that one.
Yes.
Which actually makes it a very unique movie.
And that's what was so illuminating about that film.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, that, and then then they portrayed the guy that got Dick Cheney's heart, or Dick Cheney got his heart, the guy that was in an
Right.
accident. Like, I didn't know what that guy was.
Be careful about spoilers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's actually its history, so it's not really a spoiler.
Well, actually, too, that's great. A great warm-up, too, because when we talk about the other movies, I want to be able to try to review them without
right,
spoiling
exactly. You don't
them.
want to spoil it for our viewers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a talent. Okay.
Yeah, but I will say that the characters, how they interwove the different storylines of the characters, and they did a really good job with that. And you're right, Christian Bale just nailed being Cheney. Yeah. And it's kind of scary because, you know, when you look at Christian Bale and some of his work, we talked when I was reviewing that he had also did a movie called The Mechanic. And I haven't seen that movie, but I saw trailers of it, and he lost so much weight that his ribs are sticking out of his side. Similar to what, now the actor is escaping me, but Tom Hanks. When Tom Hanks
did the island one?
When he had to lose weight for that, as if he was on a desert island for, you know, months or years.
It was called Lost?
Castaway.
Castaway, yeah.
Yeah, so, and you know, in that movie, he's talking to a volleyball, right? Or a soccer ball as his companion, because there's nobody else to talk to.
Yeah.
So he did an amazing job with that. And
they immersed themselves in the role.
They truly immersed themselves.
Yeah.
And I think the makeup helps, too. I think for Christian Bale being completely transformed into Dick Cheney, even his mannerisms, the way he walked.
He really gained the weight too.
He gained the weight. He also studied his mannerisms.
Yeah.
He, you know, kind of shuffled along, and you know the way Cheney walks. Yeah, he's a tremendous actor when you think about what he's done.
Another thing real quick about that movie was that when they actually turn to the camera, or the narration that's in that, that would be the documentary thing.
Breaking the fourth wall is
right.
what they talk about.
I didn't know what that was called, but they sort of guide you as to what's going on, which I felt was you know, a departure from the regular movie. You know, made it more like a documentary.
Right, and you mentioned about the documentary aspects. For example, they would interweave real footage of the time, and you know how the society had acted, how the president had, and like for example, when the Twin Towers on 9/11, how they had to enact the protocols to protect the president and the vice president.
Right.
And so they interwove the footage of 9/11 into the movie, which is actual footage. So it had that documentary feel.
Yeah.
So what would you have rated that out of 5 stars?
Well, thank you for asking, because I've never really rated a movie before.
I did. So.
I'm thinking less than a 4.
Interesting.
No, and the only reason, I mean, I'm going to give it a 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a good showing, but not really a 4.
Right.
And that's based on the interpretations of the characters, and that they did stick to historical, which I learned from that. So I thought it was valuable that way.
Right. Right. I think, I rated it a little higher for myself, just because I enjoyed the performances. I thought the integration of the footage, the historical footage, into the film was done really well.
Right.
I also thought they did a great job integrating comedy in there, which is kind of a very serious topic when you're talking about Cheney.
Yeah.
And I think that Christian Bale, he won the Golden Globe for this performance. He's going to be tough to beat for Best Actor.
Did you look at who's the producers on the movie are?
I did not, but I think if I remember right, Brad Pitt has a portion of that, and there's another famous actor who also put some money behind it.
Yeah, I can't remember who it is, but it's very familiar. I think they're going to embark on a new chapter with these movies. They're going to try to create maybe historical movies. Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
and I think that when you start thinking about all of these different, I talked about this when I reviewed Roma, is that now that Netflix is now in the game, and seriously in the game, they got nominated for several things for the Academy Awards, which is historic. Right. And I even admitted in my review that when I've reviewed movies on this show, I typically have not reviewed Netflix movies because I was, you know, a bit of a snob about this, is that Netflix to me was more for television and smaller screens, but Roma just knocked it out of the park, and I'm not sure if you saw that movie. But...
No, I didn't, but I know what you're saying, in that like HBO and the movies of the week kind of thing, where they're not really releases.
Exactly.
In the sense of movie going, theater going people, which is an interesting topic actually to bring up, because we talked about that earlier today, where the actual movie theaters are going through a little bit of a struggle. That they're competing. The competition is getting stiff. Nothing ever stays the same. Although it's funny that they've lasted so long and they're still popular. It's an experience for especially kids' movies, which I think are still strong.
Well, what was interesting, and we're going to segue into that in a little bit when we talk about A Dog's Way Home, is that we ran into each other at the theater. Yeah,
that's great. We almost got to sit together.
It was hilarious because I hear out of the corner of my ear, it's like, "Hey, Movie Muse!" I turn around and it's Ray, because we talked previously about watching this film, and then we should have just coordinated that.
Well,
you know, when were you going to see it? I didn't know when you were going to see it.
I was thinking about the 12 o'clock show, but then I thought, well, I'll just go later because I was walking and then segue into the show. So it was sort of last minute that I did the 2:30 show. But I thought maybe that Naomi would be doing the last minute thing too. So we did, and we actually entered the theater at the same time.
Yeah, it was hilarious because I teach Tai Chi every Sunday at noon. So I can't do the noon shows on Sundays, but I have to watch these shows before I go on the air to review them. And Dog's Way Home honestly was not on my list because there's so many Academy Award films that I need to watch before the Academy Award
So you were going to watch it because we suggested it?
Yeah, well, when we talked about this, and for those of you who are new to the Movie Muse, is that I usually start with a couple reviews of movies, and then I segue into a topic. So when I invited Ray to be on the show, we had talked about, why don't we talk about vegetarianism and how it's represented in the movies, and he also had suggested that there are people in the industry and some of the things that they ask for on set, for example, and then when we were watching the movie, the other things that we'll talk about later about sustainable practices. And so he and I were brainstorming, and I said, you know, we should probably find a movie that's current that can tie into that. And then he suggested A Dog's Way Home.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, that's not on the top of my list, but I need a feel-good movie. Because lately, all the movies I've been seeing have been really dark. And I think the Academy, when they nominate films, they tend to go for more highbrow films. Yeah. But I really appreciate that you did that.
I appreciate that you jumped into action too, and that was our last chance to see it. We both did see it, so it's fresh on our minds.
Exactly.
I'm glad that A Dog's Way Home came along, because it gives us grist for the mill, so to speak, for our tonight's topic.
Right.
So that was awesome.
Okay, so what we're going to do is that, so you gave Vice a 3.5, and I gave it a 4.5 because I liked it a lot more.
You're very generous.
I'm very generous. Well, I just thought the performances were great. I thought the topic was great. I thought it was also an educational piece, too, because a lot of people, even though that was about 10 years ago, especially with 9/11, maybe even, actually that's 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? That a lot of millennials who are in their 20s, they were only 3 at the time. So it's also an educational piece for them about what was happening at the time and how Dick Cheney and George W. Bush interacted and how they rose to power. So I did think that it did a good job to be not only educational but entertaining at the same time.
Well, I went through the whole thing and didn't even really focus on Dick Cheney so much. We knew he was kind of a bad guy, and he was a war guy. You know, he was a big part of the war, but didn't really realize all these things. I learned a lot from the movie.
Oh yeah.
So
definitely.
I would recommend it on that aspect too.
Yeah, well that's why I gave it a 4.5. Not quite a 5, but enough that people should go see it. I do think you should go see it, and if you can see it on a big screen, that is always helpful too.
Yeah.
Which takes me to the next movie that I'm going to talk about. And I was mentioning about a lot of the movies that have been nominated are very dark themes or harder themes. So here's the movie poster of Boy Erased. And the other thing that's been interesting about we were talking before the showing of this, is that Lucas Hedges has been nominated for Best Actor in this film. And then Nicole Kidman is in this film. as well as Russell Crowe.
Okay.
And I know that Ray was asking, well, I got to know your opinion about Russell Crowe in this movie because I think your wife's a big fan, right?
My wife loves Russell Crowe. She got me into Russell Crowe. And there's some epic movies, of course, of Russell Crowe.
Gladiator.
Gladiator, you got to talk about it. But there's a 5. I would give it a 5.
Absolutely. And the soundtrack.
For so many reasons.
Yeah.
I totally bought that whole movie, and it got an Academy Award. It won the Academy.
It won so many different awards.
Did he win for Best Actor?
I don't think so.
He was up for it.
I think he was up for it in Naomi, but I don't think that year he did.
I'm going to tell you a movie that I think is up there with Gladiator, and I know
a Russell Crowe movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Beautiful Mind.
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay.
But still better than that in my mind. Master and Commander.
Oh, and that's based on those books. I have not seen that.
It's a historical thing, a period piece.
Period piece.
Right, but it's done so well, and it's just a great story. It's like a shipping, pirates. Yeah, there's pirates. I guess it's pirates in English.
He's the admiral of a fleet, right?
Well, no, it's just of a ship, but the ship's old and aging, and there's a French a ship that's trying to take over.
Okay.
And they're chasing them around, and it's really, you can imagine being on a ship, and it's like the other ship's faster than you, and they slowly, they're going to shoot you and kill you, and they're just there for like a day and a half, just creeping up on you, and then the fog comes in and obscures them, and they get away, and so it's this dog and cat chase, all through. But it's just a great movie. I would really recommend that. To go rent that movie, or
I will rent that just based on your recommendation. I do like Russell Crowe in general. Like I said, Beautiful Mind is one of my favorite films of his.
Yeah,
I loved him in Gladiator. This movie is not one of his best works.
Well, lately he's kind of like, lagging, I think.
Well, part of it is not his fault, because part of it is the writing. Is that he did not have a big role to play. He plays the father of Lucas Hedges in this film, and he gained weight for this role as well.
Right.
And I think what they did is this is based on a true story, and so they tried to find actors that had the same kind of build and same kind of look, and he plays a preacher that decides that because his son is gay, that he wants to send him to this camp.
Right.
And that he feels that this camp and programming can make him not gay anymore.
Right.
And so the topic itself, I think, is interesting because it's one of those movies that's very thought-provoking and also encourages discussion afterwards. And then Nicole Kidman is in this playing the mother, and she has had an amazing year.
She's in everything.
She's in everything right now.
I know.
Did you see her in Aquaman?
No.
Okay.
And I heard your review last week about Destroyer, which is, you've got to see that.
Have you seen Destroyer?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
They're not playing it down here, I don't think.
It just opened.
Yeah. Oh,
so it's probably not playing at this theater, but there are some theaters that are playing it. So, but I would say Destroyer you have to see, and then Aquaman. If you're a big fan of the comics, then yeah, you should see her in that too. I saw part of it. I actually got kicked out of the theater for moving. What?
Well, for moving around. I saw.
You got kicked out of the theater?
Well, no, I was in where was I? Down in San Diego, and just killing time, and I saw Bohemian. I paid to see Bohemian Rhapsody, and then I walked out in the middle, and then I was just thinking, well, like I want my money back.
You did not stay through the whole thing of Bohemian Rhapsody?
No, actually what it was is I paid to see, no, there's a movie with Julia Roberts that her son is a drug addict.
Yes,
Ben.
Lucas Hedges is in that too.
Oh,
Ben
really?
is back. Yeah.
Is he the Ben?
He's Ben.
Oh.
So Lucas
Well,
Hedges...
I watched that whole, here's what it was. Okay, I'll make it real quick. I went into that movie, and the only movie that I was on time to see was the Ben story.
Ben is back.
Ben is back. Okay. So I'm
and
watching that,
and
it was a lukewarm movie, and I'm thinking, I say this jokingly too. When you don't like a movie, can you get your money back? So I was thinking that, and I thought, I'm like a sneaky guy, so I would just go around and.
You realize we're being recorded, right?
Yeah, I know. Well, this is down in San Diego, and the guy that cleans up the popcorn, I said, "Hey, can I see your ticket?" I'm like, "No, I'm out of here," kind of thing. But what happened was I went and saw part of Bohemian Rhapsody just to see if I would want to watch it.
Right.
And it was okay, but I walked in the middle, and so a little lukewarm there. Then walked over to Aquaman, and it was just beginning. So I was just standing in the back, and I could have sat down, but I just stood in the back. And I'm like, wow, this is actually cool. And so I'm watching it for a while, the first, because it starts off with action and a fight scene.
Right.
And
Aquaman.
so it caught my attention, but I never got to the Nicole because the guy came and kicked me out.
Okay.
So
well,
I could go back and watch
pay,
it. I know.
You know, just like they say, piracy is not a victimless crime.
I know.
So he should pay for his ticket.
Do not try this at home.
Do not try this at home. Disclaimer here, I'm not advocating you do what Ray does, but at least for movies.
Right.
Maybe you can do what he does for food, his energy.
It's funny that when we were there today, the guy that was sitting in my seat, he was doing the same thing. He was hopping.
He was surfing?
He left about 10 minutes into the movie. Yeah, he was moving around.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I asked him if he would switch seats with me so we could sit together. And he says, oh, well, I'm in this seat. And then...
Yeah, that was actually my seat.
So he was actually surfing. He wasn't actually...
Yeah.
Oh.
I was okay to sit in another seat. Because I'm actually... We can talk about that real quick, too. But since they've gone to the arranged seating, that really kind of bummed me out because I'm the guy that would go to the movie early to get a good seat. And you can't do that now because if you try, somebody's gotten it from 3 days ago and you go and there's nothing left but the front row. And my wife won't sit in the front row.
Right.
So we love to sit in the very back. You saw where I was.
Yeah.
And so that I don't like. And then I don't like where they've not put the, the names of the movies. And of course they're trying to stop you from theater hopping, which I think, this is just my opinion too. And it's kind of, sneaky, but if I want to go in and look at the movie I don't sit down, but I kind of walk around and go just take a peek.
You just hover.
Well, because I'm interested. I'm a potential movie customer.
Okay.
But I'm looking at the little tiny sneak preview.
That's what they call previews.
Yeah, I know.
Trailers.
I know. But then another guy that I went to school with, Corey Takeuchi, is the actual guy that's the movie between the movie? The whole big advertising that's...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's not behind the movie, it's...
Well, the trailers are the previews.
Right, the previews. Before that, there's all those commercials.
And then there's commercials. There's usually a rolling PowerPoint or something.
But it's a lot of your time. It's like a half an hour of your time now, just for the commercials.
Well, previews are typically... We haven't actually talked about this on the show. Usually previews will run about 8 to 12 minutes.
Yeah, and I like those. Those are okay. Yeah. I like those. But when I'm watching the commercials that I don't want to watch...
Before the previews
Before that, which is like more than 8 minutes. Yeah. It's now about 20 minutes. Because Corey Takeuchi, I'm going to mention his name too.
I should have him on the show. Is he local? No,
Corey, they used to own this theater down here. His dad owns what's that theater up in Santa Rosa, the Roxy?
Oh,
that's Dan Takeuchi Sr. Oh. My mom used to know them and do business with them, and I had free passes to this permanent. I just want to go back to a little nostalgia in Petaluma.
You've been in Petaluma for a long time.
The Cal Theater right down here. Okay. We could throw a rock and hit that little theater. It's the Phoenix Theater now.
Phoenix, right.
Even back when Tom Gaffey was actually running it as a theater, we used to go there, and even way before that, we went there as kids. We saw many movies there. It was always a theater. And because my mom knew the Takinis, we got in free. And so we would go there a lot.
Now, that's supposed to be haunted, the
I didn't
Phoenix
know that.
Theater.
I didn't know that.
I had Tom Wersch on this show right before Halloween. And he has a movie called Haunted Wine Country or Haunted Sonoma County, one of those two.
Okay.
That they mention the Phoenix Theater being haunted.
Well, it's an old, some sort of opera house or something like that.
Yeah.
So it has a history. But anyway, the Takinis, Corey Takeuchi, we went to the 40th high school reunion, and I saw him again, right? Corey Takeuchi. We grew up together in this town. And he was kind of like the black sheep of the family a little bit because he was a car salesman, and he didn't really get into the theater thing like his brother did, and his dad was. But he ended up creating this, whatever that is, it's called Behind the Movie or Before the Movie. I think it's Before the Movie.
I think it's Before the Movie.
That is like a $40 million thing.
Wow.
And I really thought, good for you, Corey. No, so really, somebody that I know actually created something. Because that's all over.
Yeah.
That is all over the place.
Wow.
And it's growing. You can tell it's growing because when you watch it, I'm thinking, all right, Corey. Because Corey actually narrates on that.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he's part of it. He doesn't like doing it. I said, Corey, do more of that.
He should recruit some people from KPCA.
Yeah.
Because we do voice stuff all the time.
I think Corey would come down here. I should try to rattle his cage.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, because Corey...
Plan a time for him to come here, and if you want to be on the same show...
They actually got Dave Corkle, who owns the Boulevard, started. He had the Cloverdale Theater.
Okay.
That was Dave Corkle's first theater, and if you get on their website, you'll see that they've got 15 or 20 theaters. Just Dave alone.
Right.
It's 15 or 20, and I think Dan Takeuchi Sr. still has the Roxy in about 2 or 3.
Summerfield, too, right?
There's about three theaters. They're not real big into it anymore. and of course Corey. But I think his thing is nationwide.
Okay.
So he's if you
Very
see it
cool.
in some other state, that's Corey. So let's get him down here.
Okay, we're gonna have to do that. So
and
thank you.
Corey Takeuchi.
So just to kind of wrap up Boy Erased, is that so this film, I found this film to be very well. First of all, it's a dark topic, and then also the cinematography was deliberately dark. There's a lot of kind of a blue hue to it, and a very dark and sad moment. As far as both Nicole Kidman and Russell Crowe are kind of underutilized because you know they're really big name actors, and they're playing the parents of Lucas Hedges, but Lucas Hedges really carries this film. Yeah, and he's amazing.
They're sort of secondary to him.
They're very secondary. Yeah.
Do you buy them as the married couple and the parents?
Yeah, I believe that they're married to each other and they're the parents of Lucas. I think, as I mentioned, Russell Crowe, he plays the minister, and it's hard for him because he's got a son who's gay, and he doesn't know how to handle that and how to manage that. Plus, it takes place in Arkansas, which is a Bible Belt state, and so I think he did the best he could. Yeah. I think what's interesting is both Russell Crowe and actually Russell Crowe is from New Zealand, living in Australia, and Nicole Kidman is Australian. So they have two Australians playing Southern like Baptist parents.
Well, that's a stretch, and they're good actors.
They're good actors.
They're actually a reason I would want to go to see them. And like the latest movies with Russell Crowe, where he's a reporter, and that one I really like that one. I think he did a good job. But he's getting older, and it's not the Russell Crowe roles that you see.
It's hard for him because he's got movies like Gladiator and Beautiful Mind, and people want to see more of that. But I think he's going to have to find scripts that really showcase him, because he's a supporting character in this movie. Yeah. He doesn't have much.
I think he's going to need to reinvent himself.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Find another way to be great, because he is great. Yeah. I think his performances have been riveting in some of the, especially the ones that are war movies where he's the general, or the Gladiator thing. He's a leader.
Gladiator, and how he's fighting for his honor and his family, and you're really cheering him on. This movie. He's almost like a prop in this movie.
He's vulnerable in this movie.
He's vulnerable, but they didn't really have a lot of scenes. They had a few scenes between him and his son, and him trying to understand, but it's Lucas Hedges who really makes this movie. If Lucas Hedges wasn't in this role, it'd be hard to find an actor. Maybe Timothée Chalamet could have done this, but there's not very many actors in his age group who could carry a movie this big.
That's really interesting, because it seems like, and I haven't seen the movie, but what you're saying makes me want to go see the movie.
That's why I'm the movie muse.
Well, you're really bringing out some great points, because if you're the producers, you really think this Lucas Hedges has a lot to offer. Now look who's supporting him in this movie.
Exactly.
It's really the stories about him. So he needs to carry this movie, and so the movie is seen through his eyes. It sounds like a really interesting...
It's a really great movie with regard to the discussion. I think it's a little heavy-handed with regard to how they portray the gay community in many ways. I think in some cases there were a lot of stereotypes that were in this movie. So it would be probably good for me to get somebody from the LGBTQ community to also give me their comments on this, because at least for me, watching this as a straight woman, I enjoyed the film, and I think that Lucas Hedges rightfully got nominated for his role as a best actor in this, and being very young, that's amazing to have that kind of recognition. So I think that for me, it's kind of slow, and it's a deep topic. And
does it? I don't want you to spoil it, but I mean, is there something to put a solution on it, or a silver lining at the end, or I mean, I'm kind of...
I do think there is a twist at the end, and you have to stay to the very end, because you don't see the twist until they have the last title cards come up. So they'll talk about, this is a true story, and then they'll show pictures of the real Lucas Hedges character, and I want to say his name, I think, is Jared Eamon. So it's actually Jared Eamons is not his real name. I think his real name is Goddard. Yeah. Because it was...
You mean it was based on a real character?
Yeah. His name is Gerard Cooley, I believe. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Connolly. Actually, one comment I would make is that if this movie came out 10 or 20 years ago, it would be much more maybe controversial. I think
Yes,
I think this topic,
you're absolutely
like
right.
even in Arkansas right now, they're much more tolerant of the LGBT community.
Right.
You know,
And this takes place in
well, I know
that time.
You know, 20
Yeah.
years ago back down there, though, it would have been
Oh yeah, it would have been much harder.
Like I don't even see them having one of those biblical camps where they try to make you not gay. I don't even know if they do that
Well,
anymore.
not in California.
Oh, definitely not. The state line, it stops.
I lived in North Carolina, though, for 20-some odd years. And I will say that things are much different in the South.
Yeah.
So it goes back to, once again, Russell Crowe did a decent job, but nothing
Right.
out of the park. I think that they did give plenty of time for Nicole Kidman to really shine in this.
Yeah.
And she does a decent job. But once again, she's Australian, playing a Southern Baptist mom, you know,
Yeah.
from 20 years ago. So I go back to when you're thinking about films like this, you also think about the cinematography and also the soundtrack. And I think for this, the cinematography, the setting the tone of the movie, I think was done really well. There's, for example, there's a scene of where they're practicing in batting cages,
Right.
and that the camera does a close up of the him, the Jared Eamon's character, and another person in the camp, and it looks like they're behind a barbed wire fence. So they have the close up of that, and then they pan out, and they're swinging baseballs, or swinging bats at baseballs. So I think just the integration of the visual elements was really very well done. But it's dark. This isn't a movie you necessarily want to take a date to unless you talk about movies, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be one of those uplifting kind of movies, but it does have a twist at the end that I'm not going to reveal. I had mentioned to Ray that we don't give out spoilers on this show.
Right.
But you have to stay at the end. Don't feel like walking out, because there is a very significant twist at the end, but it won't be acted out. You have to read the title cards, because at the very end they'll say that Jared Conley, who this is the movie based on him, even though the character is named Jared Eamons in the movie, the real author's name is Gerard Conley, or Jared, depending on Gerard, I believe, and that his portrayal is really kind of a discussion of himself and what he went through. But like I said, there is a twist at the end, which I was like, yes!
Yeah,
I was so
good.
glad to see that at the end.
I'm old-fashioned, but I need resolution of the conflict.
Yes. I think you'll find that the twist at the end is significant. So for Boy Erased, I enjoyed this, but it was a little dark for me. So I'm giving this a 4 out of 5. So definitely worth seeing. I wouldn't say it's better than Vice. I think I liked Vice better, which is why I gave that one a 4.5. Okay, and with that, let me do another call signal. We're listening to KPCA LP 103.3 FM. My name is Naomi Takeuchi, the Movie Muse. Also online at kpca.fm or on Facebook Live at The Movie Muse. I'm here in the studio today with Ray Cooper, also a programmer here at KPCA, and we're talking about just different kinds of movies, especially with regard to ethics, sustainability, vegetarianism, etc. So that is a great segue to our next movie, which is A Dog's Way Home. And for those of you who just tuned in, we were talking about this earlier. This was not on my list of films to watch initially. And I think part of that is because I'm so ingrained in what's happening in Hollywood and the Academy Awards. So this isn't a film that would be Academy-nominated material.
No.
Except for the cinematography. I
well,
love
that
the
was beautiful.
cinematography.
I was going to mention that the backdrop, the scenes of the wilderness scenes.
It takes place in Denver, Colorado, and parts of New Mexico, and it was just gorgeous.
Breathtaking. And you know, it's really interesting. I was doing a little bit of research before I came over here, but then The Incredible Journey, Homeward Bound, was in 1993, and then there was another Incredible Journey in 1963, and they're both Disney.
Right.
And they're both 3 animals. So this is in a way like that. I mean, it's very similar. It's the journey of an animal, and then they have the choice of either having the animal talk, like animated as the voices, which they did in the other 2 Disney movies, And in the other Disney movies, I would have to say that I think they really put animals in some compromising position because there was no CG back then.
Right.
They were throwing him in rushing water, and the cat would be in a beaver dam and he would fall in the water. And I know it's real, of course, because it's back in the 60s. Because
it was before CGI.
Well, the 63 version, I guarantee you, they had a Siamese cat that was in the water. So that movie would never get made today.
Right.
But again, you know, it has an appeal where we care about the animals. So the animals are the journey, you know?
Right. And that's the whole thing is, regardless of who the protagonist is, you have to like the protagonist.
Right.
And how the protagonist is introduced to us, and then the journey that they have to take, and we follow along on the journey.
Yeah, something's happening to them, and we want something good to happen to them.
Exactly.
And so there's a conflict there, and they're lost. They're trying to get home. And so this was one dog, basically, but she Bella meets people meets other animals and people along the way. I want to say...
No spoilers.
I'm not going to spoil it. I've actually learned...
But you can say whatever's in the trailer, and then the reason why I put the posters up is that if there's anything in the poster, you can talk about that too.
Yeah.
That's not really... This poster really doesn't give away much. It's just Bella is sitting in a shoe.
Right.
So that's not giving away a whole lot.
We know it's a journey of a dog.
Well, plus the title. A Dog's Way Home.
And the title does, if you watch the trailer, it does kind of show you what happens. But
right.
And the thing about it is, it's a genre of movies that is doing well these days, where it's a kids movie. You know, you can bring your kids.
Right.
And it's
a feel-good movie.
It is, in my opinion. I didn't really buy it. I just want to be honest. I mean, we can talk, right?
Of course, of course.
So,
this is the movie Muse.
I don't want to drag it.
Muse about things.
I have to be honest. I mean,
we're
also,
not necessarily critics.
I know. I'll say good things. Yeah. You know, like you said, the scenery and the backdrop, cinematography,
was amazing.
Beautiful. They didn't use.
The CGI was done well too.
They used 3 actors. Actually, didn't recognize Edward James Olmos.
Ashley Judd.
Ashley Judd. I thought that was somebody famous. That was her.
It was Ashley Judd.
But she was a very minimal role, basically.
Right, she plays the mother.
Yeah, but they try to do things with the characters like they're supposed to. There isn't time to really develop the stories with the characters they meet along the way. No. Obviously, everybody's a secondary character to the dog.
Yeah, the dog's the main character.
But they did try, like they had I don't want to, again, not to spoil it, but I'm just saying that the dog meets characters along the way, and I didn't really buy the characters because I didn't feel like they had time to really sell the characters.
She had to meet so many characters.
She did meet a lot of characters. Although there is the cat, which is in the trailer, the big
the big cougar.
Yeah, I love that part.
Trailer.
That part I did like because I really.
But there was also an important part, and this I'm not going to say why, but there's an important reason why the cougar protects her. And that's why we're not going to give away spoilers.
Yeah.
There in the trailers you see a scene where she's being surrounded by, it looks like a pack of wolves, and that the cougar comes to her rescue.
Yeah.
And then you also see in the trailer that they're snuggling muzzles and they're friendly, but there is 2 really significant scenes leading up to that.
Yeah, I'll say another thing that I think is really interesting and good about the movie is that not only does the dog Bella meet people along the way, and the people are definitely characters that are, they're part of it, which I feel that's a valuable part, even though I didn't buy their position as far as the story.
Right.
But they do meet people, and the people have a part. But they also meet other animals. And I think people love that. Yeah. That's part of the appeal of the original Incredible Journeys. Here's a Siamese cat and a pit bull and a border. It was I forget the name of it. Labrador.
Mm-hmm.
Labrador. I mean, what an unlikely group, a ragtag kind of thing, and they come together.
Right.
And so people are fascinated by animals interacting. Like if you look at the internet right now, there's all kinds of, where there's a cow playing with a little cat, and so they throw in some farm animals. And actually, I want to say I have the sequel to this movie.
You have the sequel to this already?
I'm going to divulge this.
He's pitching the sequel.
Right. Well, I can say, here's my vision of the producers pitching a sequel to this movie. Hey, I've got the next movie to this. This is going to be great. They just made $30 million on this in 16 days. Okay,
cost them $18 million. Cost them $18 million.
Right. They're at $41 million, and which to me that's kind of a success, right? And, and so mine is The Cow's Way Home. Okay. You know where I'm going with that, right?
And this is probably a good segue.
Well, I think it's a good segue to talk about people's vision of animals.
Right.
Now, think about this out there in Facebook land. If they did a version of it, Cow's Way Home, and let's say we're selling that, we're going, hey, we just made $30 million on this movie. It's a dog. Let's do a cow.
So let me guess. The cow's name is Bessie.
Bessie. I need.
You gotta
that's why
pitch the cow's name.
That's why I brought you along, because I don't have a name for the cow.
But
we're gonna pitch this
one
together.
that's not trademarked by
Well,
some other group.
actually,
Don't forget.
I'd put a little twist on it.
We have a dairy here, the Clover Dairy.
Well,
and
Chloe the
they
cow.
have Chloe the cow. Yeah.
Well, Chloe could have her contract up, and now she's going to take a journey, right?
There you go.
But okay, now this is I don't want to bring people down, but my twist would be where the cow's calf got away. Like they took the calf, and somehow the calf escaped, but she was on a journey to look for her mom.
Okay.
And then, which is it's another twist, because now we're talking about a baby and a mama. And who can't identify with that? I mean, that's pretty much a natural, right?
Right.
If the bond between a mother and a child is, to me, universal. It transcends people.
That also is in this movie too.
Yeah,
about
it
the
is.
whole mother-child bond, and it doesn't have to be within the same breed.
And you know what? That's something they put in there, which is, I think, really smart and genius, because it's universal. Nobody messes with a mom and a baby. You know what I mean? I mean, think about it. Who would do that? Even criminals wouldn't mess with a pregnant woman.
Some of them do.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know what I mean? Even amongst people
Idiots do, yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, to have the calf reunited with her mom, and the mom may be going to slaughter or something too, so they catch her right before they
You got to have a feel good. You can't show the mom getting slaughtered.
Well, no, it's not going to happen. Not in my movie. It's not going to happen.
No,
because you got to end on a good note.
Americans have to end on a good note.
They do, but what have we been watching?
You could take this to France, and then.
Well, they've got those artistic movies. They've actually boldly end on a bad note. But yeah, I think the old traditional stories, there's conflict and then there's resolution, where we've been invested in this movie and we really want this to happen. So give us something at the end or we're going to be disappointed. Right. And I don't want I want the mom to obviously to be connected with the baby, but we'll throw some twists in. Yeah. You know. So that would be my version. When I was
a cow's way home.
When I was in Scotland, I actually did talk to different farmers.
And there'd be a sheep's way home if you're going to Scotland.
Well, it's like Rocky 7. We're going to do 7 or 8 movies. We're going to have, hey, look, we just made...
Pig's way home.
Yeah, Pig's way home. You know, Babe 3 or whatever. But anyway, so I was talking to these guys in Scotland, because it was all, it's nothing but pastures there when I walked across Scotland.
Sure.
And they were really, really nice to me. Like, I'd be on this highway and there'd be like, every time a car would come by, you'd have to jump on the rock wall. There's no shoulder, and there's major trucking on like a 2-lane road. And so I come across this guy's property, and he was really nice to me, and he showed me where there was a Roman road. He actually took me across his property. He said, up on that hill, which unbeknownst to me, is a Roman road, where you can go all the way to the next town. Killian, I think it was, the town. But anyway, he told me a story about this cow that they had come and taken her baby, and she went all the way up that glen, right past his property, because he was doing sheep. He didn't really do cows. He said the interesting thing about the cow is she was on a mission. Like, she smelled that baby.
Find her baby.
She went for days until she found the truck and everything.
Wow.
So it was an interesting story, and I thought that was a great thing.
And that was a cow.
It was a cow story.
See?
So my
it wrote itself. Your movie wrote itself.
I was inspired by that. But what was really inspiring is the farmer told me the story, so he really got the story too. So I think most farmers, they're involved with raising the animals, but they don't do the other parts. They're just sort of contractors in the whole system that we have. But anyway, I think people really love movies about animals. They really do.
They do. And I think the other thing about this movie that isn't really in the trailers and is not a spoiler per se, is that the main character, Lucas, works at a VA hospital. Actually, this was in the trailers, where they talk about they're hiding from the doctor because he's not supposed to bring the dog to work. So they have a game that they play with her, and that's in the trailers. Well,
they actually integrate, not to spoil it, but they integrate a lot of little stories with this that are actually very timely, very important stories to be told. They made an effort there.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I love this movie so much, is that there was the really beautiful cinematography, the interaction of the animals, and I tell you, the CGI, even though there were parts where you're saying, oh yeah, obviously that's CGI, it was believable enough that you would have the idea that this dog would have a relationship with a cougar, that wouldn't necessarily be in true to life. And how would you get actor dogs to do that? Yeah. It would be a challenge. So I think that they did a really good job with the CGI. I think also the subplots of the veterans' stories that are in this film. Yeah. I think those are great. So I'm going to have you all as our guest. What's your rating for this?
Well, I'm very stingy with my ratings. Do you do it just half star so you don't get
No,
into
you can
four?
do a half star. You
Well,
want to do a quarter star?
Well, no, do you do 4.7 or anything like
No,
that?
I
So you go
only
from
do-
4.5 to 5. Right?
Yes,
And have you given out very many 5s?
I have.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I have.
Well, here's one of the things that I have. This is just an issue for me personally, but I don't like the narration so much. You know, one of the things I don't like, I'll just give you a little tip about me. I don't like flashbacks in movies. That's one of the things that, when they start flashing
When
back...
they do the blurriness and the screens moving.
I don't like it when they move the camera around to make it look like all this chaos is going on, and it's just hard to see it. You know, those are things I don't like. But the narration factor in this was throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And that, it takes away from it. So, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to be generous. I'll give it a 4.
Okay, well, that's actually what I was going to give it to, as
Okay,
a 4.
yeah.
And I like the narration of it. So Bryce Dallas Howard, so Ron Howard's daughter, does the narration of Bella.
Okay.
And then there were certain times where you needed that narration, especially when the dog is walking through the woods. There's nobody with the dog to interact with, so you have to get into the thoughts of the dog. So I think she did a really good job, considering she's just the voice actress for this movie.
Well,
you never see her.
When it comes to animals, you either have to do the animal talks or there's somebody telling you what's going on, obviously. Sometimes the animals actually talk, and everything is sort of a compromise.
Yeah.
But I totally realized that it had to be in the movie. It's part of the movie. It's basically...
I love this movie much better than Alpha. Many of you heard me review Alpha, and that was the interaction of dogs with men in the early days when they first, are cavemen and interacting with dogs, and how they build that relationship with dogs.
Was it like a documentary?
It was it was a fictional piece, and it was awful.
Oh, was it
was
awful?
Really bad.
Yeah.
And even though I think they were really working towards the same kind of sympathy about the bond between humans and dogs, it really fell flat. So when it comes to dog movies in general, I think they did a good job on this one. I really enjoyed this, and it's a great movie if you're taking somebody on a date. Great movie for a date, especially if you're new to this person, because you don't want to take them to Boy Erase. Then he's like, okay, you have really heavy discussion there.
Here's a good litmus test of the movie. Were you like holding back tears?
I did. I
really?
was actually,
I'm surprised.
I did cry at one point of the movie, and you warned me about this. I actually brought some tissues, and I did not have to use the tissues, but you were asking me about holding back tears. So yeah, there was a scene where I was like, ah.
Well, then it's a strong 4.
So
for you.
Me, yeah.
Well, for me, I did hear 2 people told me that they were crying at that movie, and remember the little girl that was sitting next to me? When the dog's paw, she had to almost leave the theater. Oh. She was weeping, sobbing almost, because the animal got hit by the car.
Right.
That was too violent. Sorry about that. But,
oops.
I know.
Well,
I have to learn how not to.
Well, that's why
it's
I do this show.
One of the adventures.
And you do your show.
Yeah, exactly.
So now that so we do recommend this is great for kids. In fact, it was a sold out house when we were there. Yeah. Every seat was filled, and I would say a good maybe 60 to 70% were kids in that theater. And so it's great family film. It's great for date if you want to have something light. You don't want something really heavy. And like I said, fours around for this movie.
Right.
So we're really racing through time. We only have 10 minutes left. So I wanted to have a chance for you to chat a little bit about your show. And he brought some treats today.
Do you want to
Yes, I want to officially try one because we're here on Facebook Live. So for those of you who are tuned in at 103.3 FM, you might be in your car or you're listening to it like a podcast. This is why it's good to have visuals. Yeah. Because you get to see the movie posters and you get to see special things happening in the studio right now.
I could smell the chocolate.
Oh my gosh, these are beautiful. I'm going to hold this up to the camera because you can kind of see that they're shaped in different little whimsical shapes.
Happy faces.
I'm going to start with the duck.
Okay, but this is an experimental thing, and if you don't like it, chocolate, as people know, is very bitter. Without sweetener, okay?
Right.
This is the most simple chocolate formula that you could ever have. And you said you didn't want sugar, so it was a challenge for me.
I have to have stevia.
Well, the stevia.
So do you have stevia in
Yes,
there?
it's got a lot of stevia.
Okay, so stevia is being used instead of sugar, which is good.
Yeah, there is no sugar in that duck.
Good.
Okay.
Good. No sugar in the duck.
And you have to be a chocolate lover to love it.
72% roughly?
Probably more than that, because there's just stevia volume. You don't need much volume of stevia. So
I'm going to take a bite. Good. It's hard chocolate.
Yeah.
It's got a good bite to it.
Do you get the stevia?
Mm-hmm.
Not too bitter?
It's good.
A real chocolate
really
lover doesn't mind too much bitterness.
No, I like the bitter.
That's Ecuadorian chocolate. And actually, just in case you didn't like that, I did sneak some maple syrup into some stuff below the wax paper. That has some.
This is great.
Even that stuff's about 90%.
I'm going to take some of this home.
You can take it all. You can take it all, because I got plenty at home.
Oh my gosh.
I buy it by the big bag, because I give away chocolate.
This is one of the treats for being on the show.
Yeah.
You invite guests. You invite guests who know how to cook, and then they'll bring you stuff. So.
Oh, and I want to say thank you for letting me be on your show. I really appreciate it, and even talking about vegan values and vegetarian, the way it's portrayed in the movies. That's not, some people just don't want to, get into that, and you were not afraid of that, and I appreciate that. But it's always taking in a positive way. And so that's what my show is actually about. It's not just a vegan show, okay? I would really love people to know that it's about food choices and how that affects others. I think people really care about that now. It's
right.
A question that needs to be asked is, are others being affected by my choices here? And if animals are part of that, I think we need to talk about that.
Well, you had mentioned, to share with our listeners and our viewers, that there is Peter Cameron, right?
James Cameron.
James Cameron, who has a movie that's coming out, and
Game Changers,
which we were going to watch before this show, but it's not out yet. They keep moving back the launch date.
I would definitely review that when it comes out, and I'd love to chime in again. But Game Changers is about athletes and dispelling some of the myths that you have to eat meat
to have protein
to be able to function at the professional level, or there's world bodybuilders, the #1 bodybuilders and things that are vegans now, and so the record for the Appalachian Trail was held by a vegan for a year, and also the Pacific Crest Trail. Both of those 3,000-mile long trails.
Right.
The record is held by vegans. So
now, is James Cameron also a vegan?
He is a vegan.
Okay.
Yes, he is a vegan.
And there was another person you mentioned.
Joaquin Phoenix is a vegan. Ellen is vegan. A lot of people are vegan. Veganism is actually really prevalent on the platform of the internet. It's more the realism of how fast it's taking hold, and the reason is because it reflects values that we all adhere to. It's not a controversial thing in that most people love animals. So if you just say, well, I'm just not going to eat animal products, that's not necessarily controversial. It is if you try to push it on somebody who's not ready for it.
It's almost like proselytizing your specific religion on somebody else. It
mimics that, but actually it's more like, in my mind, more like civil rights when it came out, where people felt the same way about oppressing other subgroups, or what they would call subgroups of humans. And now we're just saying animals, which is so controversial because we've been doing it for millions of years, and people make a lot of money on this.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people who are paid for you not to know this. So, I'm not being paid. I mean, I'm here.
We don't get paid to be on the air. Just so everybody, full disclosure.
Yeah, it's a public radio station. Everybody's free to express their opinion. In fact, on my show, I invite anyone to come on, and anybody that's in animal agriculture would be totally respected on my show. I would never want to judge anyone. It's basically, times are changing, and I would love to get people's opinion on that. And I think people should make informed choices about what they eat. That's all.
And I think you also mentioned that some actors also request vegan products on their sets. So in other words, I think you had mentioned somebody was a meat eater, but they were on a certain film.
Well, the Noah. Whoever
Noah
directed Noah is a vegan, but he said vegetarian set. And so Russell Crowe, who owns beef ranches, I think, in Australia.
and you talked about loving Russell Crowe.
Well, I do love him. You know
As
what?
an actor.
I would never judge him because he eats meat.
Right.
Because I ate meat all my life. My brother owned a burger chain. I mean, I worked for Clover.
Right.
I know those guys.
Okay.
The founder of Clover was at my grandfather's funeral.
Oh.
I mean, I go back with these people.
Right.
That's one of the things that's significant is that's how revolutionary this is that people that were raised in an agricultural town who know...
And Petaluma is known for butter and eggs.
The most prominent students in our school were farmers. They wore these special jackets that were way better than our jackets. We were skateboarders and, just kind of hippie kids. I mean, the farmers were the future. But, in my mind, and I will say this to anyone that would listen to my show, is that you have to look out for your children as we move forward. And I don't see a future in agriculture. People are being put on the spot, sitting there eating ice cream, talking about climate change. I mean, that is a conflict. And if you're going to be an environmentalist, you really have to put yourself and be scrutinized. Mm-hmm. And so your logic needs to stand the light of day. And I don't think it does if it involves agriculture, especially dairy.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm calling him out. But I'm saying, give us your figures, give us your logic, and we'll go from there. So I just think that a natural extension of us loving animals is to stop using them as commodities.
Yeah.
It's a natural progression. A lot of people don't want to accept it. And I don't think it's good to push it on people. I really don't. But it is happening. In my mind, I'm a pretty good visionary as far as trend. Yeah, I can see trends.
I think it's more acceptable in California to be a vegan as well.
Right.
Because if I lived in North Carolina for a long time, and that's big pig farming country.
Oh, yeah.
There. In fact, when the floods were happening last year,
right,
a lot of these pig farms got flooded, and there were just hundreds of pigs who had drowned. And it was just really a sad sight to see. They had helicopter shots of all of these pigs that had drowned.
Well, they don't allow big pig farms around here. It's here. Mostly a cow area, cattle. But what happened was all the water inundated the sewer ponds that they have.
Right, exactly. And that ends up contaminating our water supply and some other health issues that came out of that.
But the National Pork Council is coming out with a vegan product.
Are they really?
Yeah. So I'm like when I say to the farmers, you have to look out for your children.
Yeah.
I think that there's an economic disaster happening for them, in milk especially. I think 20 to 30% of all liquid dairy milk is gone. And that's not an ebb and a flow.
Well,
that's not a
there's
dip
also
in the market.
allergies that are coming
out.
And some of the practices of using hormones, the bovine growth hormones that they used to use. So now a lot of this non-growth hormone.
Even cow's milk itself is full of hormones for the baby.
Right.
That's not human. And so your hormones spike when you drink milk. But anyway, it's just... there's all kinds of things coming out that, people don't want you to hear. And if you see a study that promotes meat or dairy, it's coming from the meat or dairy industry. And actually, not very many doctors are promoting that. Well,
I'm sorry to say that our time is up. But Ray, this was a delight having you on the show. I didn't get to play any of the songs because one of the things that I loved about A Dog's Way Home was the soundtrack was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But thank you again. And once again, when is your show for our listeners?
Mondays at 2 p.m. Food is Energy.
Food is Energy. And you're listening to The Movie Muse on KPCA LP. See you at the next screening and stay inspired.
Thank you.